Hello and welcome to this video on the fallacies of relevance, section 3.2, part 2. In this video I'm going to cover the remaining fallacies of relevance in section 3.2, the last 4 fallacies of relevance. So remember that the fallacies of relevance are committed because the premises are logically irrelevant to the conclusion. And another way of saying that is that there is no logical connection between the premises and the conclusion. Remember that the person who commits them might be manipulative psychologically, and so they in many cases they know what they're doing in terms of manipulation, and in so doing they're not being logical, right? Because to be logical here would mean that they give premises that are relevant to the conclusion or that do matter to the conclusion. Okay, so the next one on our list is the fallacy of accident. And this one occurs when a general rule, which is typically taken to be a good rule, is applied to a situation in which the rule does not apply or was not intended to apply. Okay, so the example here is as follows. Everyone has a right to their property. That drunken man over there who is about to get into a fight wants his gun back. Therefore, you should give him back his gun. Okay, so here we do have a general rule. Which is that everyone has a right to their property. That doesn't seem like a bad rule. The problem is that the application of that rule to this specific case is very dangerous, right? Because there's good reason to believe that a drunken man who wants a gun is going to shoot someone. So in this case, the rule just doesn't apply, and so the person who makes it look like as if it should apply is committing this fallacy. Okay, our next one is straw man. Straw man is committed when someone changes or twists someone else's argument. They inaccurately represent someone else's argument. So straw man does involve another argument that was previously given, and then the person who commits the fallacy takes it, twists it around, changes it, and then it's always easier to attack the argument that has been twisted. The fallacy got its name supposedly from the old days when soldiers used to practice on a straw man rather than attack the real enemy. So the point here is that the person is attacking something else, a twisted argument, a straw man, instead of the real argument. Okay, so here's an example. Mr. Goldberg has argued against prayer in the public schools. Obviously, Mr. Goldberg advocates atheism. But atheism is what they used to have in Russia. Atheism leads to the suppression of all religions and the replacement of God by an omnipotent state. Is that what we want for this country? I hardly think so. Clearly, Mr. Goldberg's argument is nonsense. And this is, by the way, an example taken from our textbook. It's on page 134 of the second edition, A Concise Introduction to Logic. Okay, so the question we should ask ourselves is, what was the original argument that Mr. Goldberg gave, and how was it twisted by the person who's speaking here? Well, the original argument was against prayer in the public schools, right? That was the original argument. So the person who's committing the fallacy here should have addressed that argument as it was presented. But what happens here is that they twist it around and make it about atheism and about Russia, and basically asking, do we want Russia to become the United States? The United States to become Russia. And the answer to that is supposed to be no. So it's easier to twist that kind of argument around than to actually address the original argument, which was against prayer in the public schools. Okay, the next one here is missing the point. The fallacy of missing the point occurs when a person draws a conclusion which is not indicated by the premises that have been given. So we're going to have certain premises, and they're supposed to indicate or imply a certain conclusion. And the person basically draws a conclusion that is very different than the one conclusion that the premises do support. So here's an example. Crimes of theft and robbery have been increasing at an alarming rate lately. The conclusion is obvious. We must reinstate the death penalty immediately. Okay, another example from our Hurley textbook, 12th edition of A Concise Introduction to Logic, in page 136. Okay, so we have the premises here, one premise, that the crimes of theft and robbery have been increasing at an alarming rate lately. That's the premise. What should follow from that premise isn't that we should reinstate the death penalty, right? What should follow from that premise is something like we should have a neighborhood watch program. We should find out why these crimes are happening. That would be what would follow, right, from these premises. Not that the death penalty should be reinstated immediately. So basically, the person misses the point in the sense that they don't get the point of the premises. They don't really understand what the premises are supposed to conclude, or are supposed to support. They conclude something else that is typically way out there. Okay, the next one here is red herring, and this one occurs when a person changes the subject or goes off on a tangent. So they don't at all address the issue or the opponent's original argument. So like straw man and like ad hominem, red herring also involves another argument that had been given or maybe another issue that was raised. And so what happens here is that the person just completely changes the subject and starts talking about something else. And that's obviously a fallacy of relevance, because what they start to talk about is irrelevant, totally irrelevant to the conclusion that they want to draw. Okay, so here's an example. There's a good deal of talk these days about the need to eliminate pesticides from our fruits and vegetables, but many of these foods are essential to our health. Carrots are an excellent source of vitamin A, broccoli is rich in iron, and oranges and grapefruit have lots of vitamin C. And this is another example from the Hurley textbook. So basically, the original issue here was pesticides, right? And that basically the argument made originally was to have pesticides removed from fruits and vegetables. But the person here goes off on a tangent and starts talking about how good vegetables are for us, right? All that may very well be true, but that's a change of subject. To talk about how good carrots are, how good oranges and grapefruits are, it's just to totally change the subject and not address the real issue, which is whether pesticides should be eliminated. Okay, so that is it for the fallacies of relevance. Make sure you do your homework and practice. Doing your homework will be practice, and that's exactly what you're going to need to do in the quizzes and in the final exam. You're going to need to show that you can recognize the fallacies.